Welcome to another edition of Sharing Movies Worthy. I'm your host, David Knight, and this time we're talking about a very interesting movie called Whitebird, and I'll explain why in just a moment. And we're brought to you by islandpopper.com, makers of gourmet popcorn, beekings.com, makers of honey dusk, and snowcreekmeadows.com, makers of goat milk soap and lotion. And all three of these companies are giving you 10% off on your online orders by simply using the promo code 2PASTORS. That's the number 2 and PASTORS. Also supporting us is Kids Matter. That's kids with a Z, matter.com. The movie we're talking about today is Whitebird. It comes to us from Kingdom Story Company, and they've made a lot of good movies. And in fact, they do things to share a rush of hope. That's their motto. And so this time it's called Whitebird. They've brought us Before Jesus Revolution and some other things, but this time it's a little bit different.
Tell me about this new school of yours.
Right now I'm just trying to fit in. It's kind of been my motto ever since I left my old school.
Julien, you did not leave your old school. You were expelled for being cruel to another boy. I'm sure your father has told you stories about when I was a young girl.
He says you don't really like to talk about it.
I don't. But now, I think, for your sake, I must.
The basic storyline is that a student is bullied, and so he visits with his grandmother, who reveals this whole different world that she's lived. And so you walk away thinking, this is an important movie. I remember thinking the same thing when I watched Schindler's List, that, you know, there was some scenes that were uncomfortable in Schindler's List, but this is like the middle school version or high school version of that. And so you don't have to worry about nudity and things like that, but you do need to know that there's some gunplay that takes place in it, some things that happen, and they're disturbing, but they don't glorify them. So you might hear of some gunshots in one scene where there's people in the forest, but you don't actually see the people being shot. In one other scene, you do see a person who gets shot, and it's not something you wouldn't see in NCIS or some of the TV show, but you need to be aware that this does happen. And so if you have children that shouldn't see that, or you feel uncomfortable with that kind of thing, then don't go. But by all means, this is a worthy movie.
Find him!
Sarah, the soldiers are still searching for you. You need to come with me right now. I know a way out.
We've seen aspects of this story before in terms of the German occupation of France and the impact it has on these individuals and the choices that they make and the degree of compassion and kindness that they extend to each other at the risk of their own lives.
This is a really important movie because it is the kind of movie that you watch and it makes you think. And if we don't remember the past, we're destined to relive it in the future. There are so many people that have lost their lives. 6 million Jewish people died in the war. And so yet we take this time when we think about it. So this is a beautiful movie about being kind to others. And there's some twists and turns in the movie, but you're going to want to check it out. If you go to a couple of movies this year, make sure this is one of them.
Yeah, it feels very important. Pretty much everything in this story is grounded in history. It's fictional characters put in very real circumstances.
The barn had become my whole world, and Julia, its center.
One of the really interesting things I found was that another of my relatives actually was hidden in a barn on a farm by a non-related, non-Jewish family, actually. Hidden from the Nazis. This was in Holland, actually, but during the war, which I hadn't found out about before.
We must, all of us, use the light within ourselves to stop the injustices of today. For only then can we be certain that the darkness of the past will never be repeated. Vive l'humanité!
Vive l'humanité!
Until next time, keep sharing the popcorn and sharing movies worthy.